Not expect everyone to understand. They doxed me by including my phone number in the post, resulting in several calls from relatives attempting to persuade me and secure an invitation to my wedding. I showed Rob the post. He recommended we sue them for slander and harassment, but I informed him that I no longer wanted anything to do with them. I went insane and posted videos of them calling me names and obviously discriminating against me because I was unattractive, along with my side of the story. I stated in the article that they were no longer welcome to the wedding, and that they should pay me for the gowns I gave them as a gift, or they would hear from my lawyer shortly. Many individuals who had previously supported them quickly flipped sides after watching the video and began attacking them. Instead, they assumed I was lying about releasing the tapes and attempted to intimidate me into giving them what they wanted. But I played the reverse card, and they had no place to hide. They hadn't thought things through and were now in big trouble. My maternal grandmother sent me a couple emails imploring me to forgive them. But when I told her she could choose not to attend my wedding if she wanted to support my family, her attitude changed. The next several weeks were tremendously hectic, but I had meticulously planned everything, even hiring security guards for my wedding site as I expected them to arrive, which they did. My father was too arrogant to participate, so only my mother and Kelly wore the outfits and showed there as if nothing had occurred. When they were denied admittance, they threw a hissy fit. Before the important visitors arrived, Rob walked outside and ordered them to leave or face arrest for trespassing on private land. They opted to go with little to spare, but not before cursing me as I watched from the window. The cherry on top was that as they were leaving, Mom accidentally walked on a sprinkler, igniting it and ruining both her and Kelly's clothing. Following that, the wedding proceeded well, with my aunt escorting me down the aisle and the majority of my side apologizing to me for my family's behavior. I begged them to forget about it and enjoy the wedding, which they ultimately did. Update 4. This is the final update on the incident. So, while on my honeymoon I received the outfits back from Kelly and Mum by mail. They were wrecked due to the sprinklers, but it wasn't about the dresses, it was about making a statement. Rob insisted on bringing a case against my family for attempting to slander me with lies. But I declined since they had already caused enough harm with their Facebook postings, and my genuine happiness was knowing that I would not have a toxic family. My aunt is still the person I have the greatest faith in, and now that I'm pregnant, she may be the grandma my child truly deserves. I haven't heard anything about my family, save that my father now has a drinking problem. My mother continues to malign me, and Kelly has left the city to start over and attempted to send me an apologetic SMS. I honestly don't care since they were the ones who blew away our relationship for trivial reasons, and now that I'm happier, I don't want to jeopardize my serenity with bogus apologies. So I began asking them questions, with my aunt sitting by me for confirmation. The first few questions weren't too concerning, but they soon realized what I was questioning them about was a private chat between them. They instantly recovered and continued to lie and try to divert attention away from the topic. When they did not respond to my inquiries immediately, I took out my phone and played the audio of their chat for them. They both quietly hushed speaking after that, and a few seconds later, revealed their true selves. They began to disparage me, claiming that I was never the one who deserved such a wonderful life, given that Kelly was the prodigy of their family, and that they had known I wasn't one of them since I was born, proving it further by playing games rather than assisting them financially. I felt horrible hearing that. But I remained firm and reminded them that they were being videotaped, and that if they didn't want the video to be posted on Facebook, they should accept the reality that they would no longer be a part of my wedding. I told them that I could disinvite them from the wedding, but it would create doubts about our connection, and I didn't want any focus on them, so I spared them the shame. I also assured them that after the wedding, I would not see their faces again. I also warned them that they should not socialize with me in order to get future privileges, and that they should return the clothes I gave them as soon as possible or pay me for them. The mother and daughter were furious and promptly got a cab to depart. My aunt and I had the property to ourselves till the next day, so we took full advantage of it, viewing it as a celebration of our victory over my family. I asked my aunt if she would lead me down the aisle instead of my father, and she sobbed first before agreeing. As of now, the wedding is less than a month away, and I'm waiting for Kelly to return the dresses because I know she and her mother cannot afford them. Update 3. I apologize for the late update, and I want to thank everyone who congratulated me on my wedding, which was the cause for the delay. I expected things to settle down fast after warning my relatives to keep low until my wedding, but that did not happen. A week after the bachelorette, I still hadn't received the gowns I sent to my mother and Kelly. But I didn't want to cause any controversy so close to the wedding, so I decided to deal with it later. That day, my aunt called and asked me to check Facebook. My whole family had turned on me, writing a lengthy 5-part Facebook post raving about how I had been abusing them since I received money. They made up a lot of stuff, including disclosing my early faults and mischiefs. which occurred with children yet were wicked because I committed them. They closed the message by requesting everyone's assistance since I was blackmailing them for money. My aunt left several comments about how they were lying, but as predicted, the ones in my favor were deleted. Many people chastised my parents for being so brutally honest about my childhood, to which their only response was that they had been through it all and did. I should break off contact with my family over this. But I digress since I haven't spoken with them in years, and it never occurred to me to do so because they are, after all, my family. I shared this post with my aunt in the comments, and she advised that I speak with them honestly once if I wanted to give our relationship a fair chance, which seemed like a reasonable strategy. So 1 week after the engagement party, I went to my parents' place for supper. They hadn't contacted me after obtaining no answer from me regarding their charges that I embarrassed them. When I arrived, they were pretty icy and hardly spoke until I brought up anything. I sat them down and informed them how I found out about their plan, following which I explained that their silence was not due to arrogance but rather a lack of words. I told them everything I had despised about them since I was a youngster in an honest attempt to understand their point of view and mend our connection. To my amazement, they were quite compassionate and apologized profusely for what they attempted to do at my engagement party. Their apologies were genuine, but I couldn't fully trust them after the engagement party debacle. Since the wedding was approaching, I went to the store to inspect my dress and get any final modifications done. I had originally planned to bring my aunt, but I decided to bring my mother and sister as well, in order to foster new relationships. One thing I failed to mention previously. I dropped a lot of weight in college, so I wasn't regarded the ugly one anymore, or hadn't been so far. My aunt became tearful at the dress fitting when she saw me wear it, but my mother and Kelly reacted rather neutrally. I attempted to inquire if they wanted to add anything to the overall appearance, but they declined, so I got out of the dress and packed it. Kelly suddenly approached me with this extravagant-looking satin gown, suggesting that it should be my bridesmaid's dress. It was a very gorgeous outfit. But when she saw the price, she said they couldn't afford it, and set it down. I didn't offer to pay for it at the time, but I decided to buy it for my mother and sister because they were in my wedding party, and then we all went. The next day, I purchased the outfits and presented them as gifts. A few days following our visit, my relatives continued to gently impose little wedding function specifics on me, such as the color of the flowers, the guest list, and the festivities that would take place. It was unpleasant at first, but I stood up for myself and informed them I would approach them directly if I needed their help. This may not have set well with them since what followed was an incredible train wreck. My mother called me about an hour after they left the house. I picked it up, and when she didn't answer, I realized she may have unintentionally dialed me. She and Kelly were in the bar, and as I was ready to hang up, I overheard them discussing me. They mocked my wedding gown, saying I couldn't pull off anything like that in 100 years, and were astounded that I could attract such an attractive and affluent guy when I wouldn't even be employed as a maid in his home. They proceeded to mock me, calling me an uptight B-word, and said they wished they could access my fortune without ever seeing my face again. I had had enough at that moment, so I ended the conversation and had a breakdown right away. I couldn't believe how rude my mother and Kelly were being, like classic bullies. The next day I contacted my aunt and explained everything. She came to my house, consoled me, and reminded me that I had the upper hand in the issue, and that she was always there to support my decision whatsoever. Fortunately, my phone recorder was turned on during the call, so I had evidence of their discussion in case they tried to dispute it. I'll have to make some difficult decisions now, and not without proper retaliation. Update 2. So I guess you were all correct about how I should have cut off my family when they assaulted me at my engagement party, and now I am carrying out that advice with a twist of my own. I had decided not to invite my mother and Kelly in the wedding party, but I still wanted to hear my father's opinion on the matter. I called and saw him in person that day, when Mum and Kelly were out shopping. I told him everything that happened in the boutique and over the phone, but instead of siding with me, he started reminding me to remember my position. I asked him what he was talking about, and he said he was tired of begging for money, when I should have provided it as soon as I found out about it. I told him he should have asked for it right away, and if he expected me to comprehend everything going on with them without saying anything, he should have attempted to create a connection, instead of using me as a joke in family chats, and continually comparing me to Kelly. He told me that I should remember that they paid for me until I was 18, and that they were the reason I was here today, despite my harsh treatment of them. His comment disgusted me, and I finally realized that this family was not mine in the first place. They traumatized and marginalized me throughout my childhood. They ran back like dogs when they smelled money. I didn't say anything after that and left. I didn't hear from anybody in my family for the following 2 days, which meant Dad hadn't informed Mum and Kelly about our chat, and I finally had time to formulate a strategy to expose them. In discussions with Rob and my aunt, I decided to arrange a bachelorette party for just my aunt, Mum, and Kelly, I'd host the party in a secluded area, set up cameras surreptitiously, and invite them to play truth or dare with me. In the game, I'd ask them questions on the topics they were discussing on the call, exposing their hypocrisy if they lied or the truth if they didn't. The bachelorette party was held the next weekend. My mother and Kelly were overjoyed because it was a completely compensated experience and drank heavily. They were quite kind to me, which indicated they were oblivious that I understood everything. I made it clear that I would provide them references to check for, and that I would not be paying for anything. They attempted to persuade me by seeming to be kind, but I declined. 5 months before the wedding, Rob and I decided to make an engagement announcement in my hometown first, and then plan the guest list around it. So I invited my family and a large number of my relatives to the engagement celebration. It was commonly known that because Rob was CEO, a large number of notable guests would be invited to each occasion. My folks were simply pleased to be included at this stage. Everything was going as planned until I received a call from my aunt one day, who stated that she wanted to speak with me in person as soon as possible. I met her in the coming days, and she informed me that my family was plotting something against me. She said that my mother was fully aware of my disdain for them and Kelly, and was organizing a spectacle during my engagement announcement. So their financial condition had deteriorated when they sent Kelly to college because my father had retired. My mother had been the family's primary provider, and with Kelly not working after college, they were in desperate need of money to preserve their social position. When they saw I had been engaged to a wealthy man, they attempted to patch things up with me in the hopes that I would immediately become their ATM and give them money, realizing their predicament. However, once I stopped down their attempts, they intended to adopt a fairly clever approach. Their initial idea was to have Kelly be my maid of honor so she could be paired with one of the groomsmen. That seemed unlikely because I refused to accept their antics and maintained control of my wedding, so they devised something more nasty. They had purchased a cheap imitation jewelry online and planned to present me at the engagement party, saying it was an original for Kelly. Once I was caught with the necklace, they would hide it in my backpack and stage a scene in which it was stolen. After discovering it in my luggage, they'd accuse me for stealing it in front of everyone, and in exchange, my fiancé may provide them some money, while I'd pay for their bills and make Kelly my mistress. My family's audacity astonished me, and I became emotional. My aunt reassured me, telling me that she had approached me as soon as she learned of the plan to warn me of my parents' intentions during the party and the course of action I intended to follow. I thought about it for a moment, and requested my aunt not to tell them I was aware of it since I intended to return it to them. I informed my aunt that we could acquire another replica of the necklace and place it in my mother's bag after she had placed her piece in mine. Her shame would know no bounds when she saw the necklace she accused me of stealing in her luggage, and perhaps that would cause them to reconsider their choice to design it to disgrace me in the first place. My aunt agreed to the proposal and was instantly on board. The day of my engagement party came. Everything was proceeding as planned, and my mother had no idea I knew about her plan. She showed me the necklace, and then grabbed my father and Kelly, crying that her precious jewelry had been lost. I glanced in my purse and instantly took out the necklace, which I carefully gave to my aunt. Then I went to my mother and inquired what was going on with her. She put the necklace's loss on me because I had it last and asked me to examine my luggage. I feigned to calm her down and urged her to check her luggage before blaming anybody else, then stole it from her. I then opened it to show everyone the necklace. My family was taken aback by how quietly everyone was discussing them. Before they could say anything, I loudly told them that their techniques of making me the source of every problem, which they used to do when I was younger, were no longer going to work, and that while I may not have been as attractive as them, I had much superior morals, which was what counted in the real world. They remained silent for the remainder of the party and departed early, all humiliated. The next day I received several voicemails from my parents and relatives stating that I should not have brought up the past after their repeated attempts to make amends to me, that the blame for the necklace was not intentional, and that my character assassination of them appeared extremely distasteful. Now that I think about it, humiliating them was enough, and perhaps I shouldn't have remarked on their personality because it makes no difference between me and them. So AITA, you are purposely doubting my family's character after they attempted to damage my reputation during my engagement party. Update 1. Thank you to everyone who chimed in and offered advice on my predicament. Many commenters suggest that my family harassed me throughout my life and compared me to my sister because I was unattractive, but now I'm getting married to a wealthy man, and my family is asking me to bring them to my wedding. I, 23F, was born into a middle-class household consisting of my parents and my elder sister Kelly, 25F. My parents were academicians, so it was evident that they had high hopes for Kelly and me. Kelly was an outstanding student, a high-achieving individual with the appearance of a Greek goddess. I, on the other hand, was not as intellectually successful or attractive, and little overweight, yet talented in art from an early age. Everyone who claims that appearance does not important in society has never been an unattractive person, as I endured discrimination from my own family. I thought it was all right when my parents lectured me about my schoolwork since I knew why. But they always ended up criticizing on my appearance, and how I couldn't even carry off the stupid blonde stereotype if I failed at everything else, continually comparing me to Kelly. Kelly didn't say much, but I could feel her stare on me as we went to school, as if she preferred to hide rather than be seen with me, even as a youngster. At every family gathering, whenever my relatives tried to compliment me on my accomplishments, my parents would interrupt and make jokes about how horrible I looked, comparing my visage to that of animals. They received some uncomfortable chuckles because they were the hosts, but the harm they inflicted to me was permanent. I constantly blamed myself for my appearance, which caused me to develop an inferiority complex. I seldom spoke to anyone or participated in any school activities for fear of being criticized. My school counselor observed me sitting in an empty class, painting, and advised I enter the forthcoming poster contest. I declined, and she decided to get to the bottom of it by talking to me about it. She learned about my problem and phoned my parents the same day, asking them to refer me to a psychologist because their frequent criticism wasn't helping. To avoid being labeled neglectful, they decided to register me in treatment. The following several years went well, with my therapist assisting me in eventually building my self-worth. However, this did not affect my parents' caustic sentiments. They mocked my appearance, and when I expressed my displeasure, they suggested that I develop a sense of humor. I resolved at that time that I would leave their house as soon as I reached 18. Finally, my 18th birthday arrived, and my parents made sure it was all about Kelly. Kelly landed a modeling assignment. Kelly was accepted into a well-known college. Kelly is the finest was all I could hear during the gathering. It was only my maternal aunt who spoke out, reminding everyone that it was my birthday and that we should talk about me instead. Everyone agreed except my family, who didn't enjoy my aunt's intervention and remained silent for the rest of the gathering. Even when it was time to sing happy birthday after the party, I went back to my room and sobbed. The next day I phoned a buddy, who assisted me in finding a little apartment, and I had money set up for my part-time work, so money was not an issue. My family had no problem with me moving away. Forget about asking why they had no idea I was going for good until I began filling my friend's car with boxes of my belongings. They didn't say anything, only that now that I was gone, their house will appear fashionable. Kelly was also leaving for college this year, and she suddenly offered me a book she enjoyed as a parting present. That year, I studied and worked incredibly hard, discovered my passion for software engineering, and was lucky to get accepted into a very prestigious institution. I hadn't spoken with my parents since moving out, so I decided to go and ask them to my graduation. I arrived home to a closed door. I contacted them, and when they eventually answered, they informed me that they would be unable to attend my graduation since they were on vacation outside of the country. I expected them to alter their views after hearing of my admittance and offer to cover my tuition, like they had for Kelly, but all I got was, "Oh, that's great. Good for you." I ended the phone and went directly to my aunt's to ask her to my graduation instead. We chatted and I sobbed briefly about my family's distant behavior, and she pledged to be there for me from then on. I went to a different city the next month to attend college. 6 years later, I was a software engineer at a respectable firm and a freelance graphic designer. My relationship with my family has been virtually non-existent in recent years. I used to only get asked to large family gatherings, only to be mocked most of the time, so I decided to quit attending after a year. My aunt observed this and welcomed me to her house for the whole Christmas season, so it's safe to say I didn't miss my family. The firm I worked for was quite informal, with no obvious hierarchy among the staff. When our firm required someone to update its logo, I volunteered. I was invited to work with a person from the workplace who I had never met before. Let's name him Rob. Rob and I worked on the project for about 3 months and became close friends. We started hanging together after work, realized it was something more, and eventually began our relationship. By the end of our collaboration, I had discovered that he was the company's CEO and founder, which made no difference to me because he was just Rob. After a year of dating, he proposed to me extravagantly on a trip to Paris. I was overjoyed, and my aunt was the first to learn about it. The next day, I contacted my relatives and posted on Facebook to alert the rest of my extended family. Surprisingly, I received a call from my mother for the 3rd time in nearly 7 years. She seemed thrilled and praised me, then invited me to a private family dinner the following weekend. I considered it and said yes to her. The supper was not at my place but in a very posh restaurant. I met my parents and my sister Kelly, who was between jobs after college. My folks were trying to be friendly to me, but I kept my guard up. They inquired about the wedding, and I informed them that I had no arrangements yet. This is when they broke character, and I understood why they wanted to meet me. They begged me to include them in my wedding. I was taken aback by this and made it plain that it would be my decision once I made it, and that they had no right to make demands after being missing for over 7 years and only turning up when they wanted something. They were silent, so I asked about the bill. I assumed we'd go Dutch, but I was told that they wanted me to pay the full price because I was now marrying this wealthy man. I had had enough of them by that time, so I paid the bill and went without saying goodbye. I discussed this with Rob, who told me that the wedding would be exactly how I wanted it, with only the individuals I wanted there on my special day. From that day on, I had regular calls from my parents, urging me to invite them and make them a part of the wedding since we were family, and family came first. I was quite hesitant at first because of what occurred at the previous dinner, but after their repeated apologies for their behavior towards me during my childhood and so far, I decided to behave like the larger person and give them another opportunity. I told them that Dad could accompany me down the aisle and my mum and Kelly could be my bridesmaids, and they were cool with that. Things began to go wrong when they started shopping for the wedding. They got the most costly items from the retailers and asked me to pay for them.